30 years ago, Hyundai was viewed as a small Korean company, producing cheap, unattractive, and unreliable vehicles. People even cracked jokes about the brand, suggesting you could double a Hyundai's value by filling it up with gas. Fast forward to today, and Hyundai has transformed into one of the top quality vehicle manufacturers, surpassing industry giants like Ford, Honda, and General Motors. What adds intrigue to this success story is the man behind it all, a farm boy who sought to escape poverty. Leaving home as a teenager, he faced a journey marked by failures, misfortunes, and embarrassments. Hey explorers, your thoughts mean the world to us. So feel free to share in the comments what fascinating stories or topics would you like us to unfold next. Despite these challenges, he went on to establish the largest company in South Korea, not only dominating the automobile industry, but also making significant strides in construction, shipbuilding, and more. This remarkable individual turned himself into the wealthiest man in South Korea. This is the compelling rags to riches narrative of Hyundai and its visionary founder, Chung Ju-Yung. Born in 1915 in a small village in Tongkong, a place now situated in North Korea, Chung Ju-Young's journey began during a time when Korea was under the harsh colonial rule of the Japanese Empire. Chung was born into an extremely poor family, facing the hardships of a dismal economy and a restrictive environment. His family, grappling with these challenges, worked tirelessly on the farm for long hours, just to put food on the table. Despite Chung's dream of becoming a school teacher, as the oldest of 7 children, he had no option but to abandon school at the age of 14. Instead, he joined his father in laboring from dawn to dusk, manually planting and harvesting rice, tending to animals, and selling firewood in various towns. Despite their relentless efforts, the family struggled to secure enough food, and the fear of a single bad harvest, leaving them starving for months, loomed over them. "Will I always be a farmer, with a perpetually bent back?" Chung questioned, feeling the weight of a life that mirrored the toil of his father. Such thoughts haunted him as he grew tired and frustrated with the persistent poverty. At the age of 16, he reached a breaking point. Alongside a friend, he decided to escape their village, walking through the most perilous parts of the country until finally reaching the city of Kawan, which is now part of North Korea. In Kawan, they secured jobs as construction workers, even though the pay was meager. Despite the modest income, Chung found it far more appealing than the toils of farm life. The idea of earning his own money brought him joy. Unfortunately, this newfound satisfaction was short-lived. Only 2 months after his escape, his father tracked him down and brought him back to the village. By then, however, it was too late. Chung had glimpsed the life he desired, and he was determined not to settle for anything less. Over the next 2 years, Chung attempted 2 more escapes to the city of Seoul, now the capital of South Korea. Despite each attempt, his father apprehended him and brought him back home. "Don't forget, you're just a farm boy who only finished the 6th grade, his father reminded him. "I hear Seoul is filled with unemployed graduates, but who are you? A nobody like you won't make it." Despite these discouraging words, they couldn't deter the young boy. Witnessing the devastating impact of a bad harvest on the village, leaving its people without enough food for winter, Chung decided to make his 4th and final escape. This is where Chung's true journey begins. He took whatever job came his way, starting as a laborer and later becoming a construction worker. Eventually, he took on the role of a handyman at a starch syrup factory. It wasn't until the following year that he landed a more promising position at the Bokong rice store. Here, he worked as a delivery man, transporting rice on his bicycle. Unlike his previous jobs, this one provided stability and even included meals. Despite starting from the bottom, Chung's exceptional work ethic impressed the owners so much that he rapidly climbed the ranks. Within 6 months, he earned the position of store accountant. However, in the subsequent years, the owner faced health challenges and realized he could no longer manage the shop. he made the decision to sell the business to his young apprentice, Chung Ju-Yung, who, at 22 years old, took charge of the Bokong Rice store. Swiftly renaming it the Kyungul Rice Store, Chung developed a new customer base by offering competitive prices. His remarkable efforts propelled the business to soaring profits, quickly establishing it as one of the premier rice shops in town. Unfortunately, disaster struck when the Japanese colonial government implemented a rice rationing system in Korea, diverting rice to Japan and its military due to the war with China. This compelled many Korean business owners, including Chung, to cease trading rice and ultimately led to the closure of his business. With nothing else to fall back on, Chung had to return to his home village. However, he never lost sight of his vision for a better future, and decided to give the city another shot in 1940 with a new business venture. He created a list of businesses that the Japanese government hadn't imposed restrictions on, and the most promising one was the car repair business. Taking a bank loan, he purchased a repair shop to launch his next venture, the Edo Service Garage. At the time, there was a high demand for auto repair services in the city. The challenge was the scarcity of such shops, and the few that existed tended to overcharge their clients. Since Chung knew little about cars, he hired a skilled mechanic to handle the work and set his business apart by offering the most affordable prices in the city while prioritizing excellent customer care. This straightforward approach jump-started a thriving business, prompting Chung to bring in more mechanics to meet the increasing demand. Unfortunately, disaster would strike again just a few months later. A fire erupted, consuming the entire shop, including their equipment and customers' vehicles. This plunged Chung into a serious predicament, burdened with massive debts and nothing to show for them. Seeing only one way out, he secured another loan and established a new repair shop in a busier part of the city. In this location, Edo Service Garage quickly garnered a larger customer base due to its competitive prices. Over the next 2 years, it evolved into one of Seoul's premier auto repair spots, boasting a team of over 70 employees. Despite plans to expand further, a significant event unfolded that would alter the fate of Chung's company. In 1942, during the midst of World War II, the Japanese occupational government took control of his service garage, merging it with a steel plant as part of their war efforts. Simultaneously, tensions in Seoul escalated due to the war, compelling Chung, still reeling from the loss of his business, to return to his home village. Despite the setback, Chung had managed to save up 50,000 won and eagerly anticipated his next business venture. Little did he know that this new endeavor was about to change everything. When the Second World War came to an end, Korea gained independence from the Japanese Empire. With no more government restrictions, Chung reopened his service garage in 1946, naming it the Hyundai Auto Service Center. In English, Hyundai means modern. They initially catered to Japanese jalopies and US military trucks. By the year's end, the business had expanded so much that Chung's employee network nearly tripled from 30 to 80 people. Once again, he had built a successful business, free from disruptions by the Japanese government. By then, he had reunited his family in the newly established country of South Korea. They all actively participated in the business alongside Chung. However, while Chung submitted contracts for 300 or 400,000 won for his auto repair services, he later witnessed a construction company receiving up to 10 million won per contract. He was amazed that someone could earn that much money from a single project. As a result, he founded the Hyundai Construction Company in 1947. The company initially struggled, barely managing to get by building U.S. Army quarters, auxiliary sites, and repairing buildings. By 1950, the Hyundai Company was finally making significant progress. However, North Korea launched a massive attack on the South, forcing Chung to abandon his business and evacuate to Busan with no money in his pockets. He and his brother wandered from place to place, working for various publishers and delivering newspapers to citizens in the frontline troops. Spreading the news that UN forces were on their way to rescue them became their only hope. as people were more terrified than ever to fall under the North Korean regime and the Communist Party. One day, Chung stumbled across a help-wanted sign by the U.S. Army. At the time, the U.S. forces needed local experts in the construction business, so Chung was eager to offer his help. He began building barracks for thousands of American soldiers during the war, and soon developed a great partnership with the U.S. Army. He later brought his team to complete even bigger projects, such as remodeling a U.S. quarter in South Korea and building lodging for the U.S. president during their visits. This turned out to be a masterstroke because by the time the Korean War ended, Chung's company was in the prime position to handle nearly every order from the U.S. Army. Simultaneously, the South Korean economy struggled, making it one of the poorest countries in Asia, even falling below North Korea. In response, the U.S. government provided billions of dollars to the South Korean government to rebuild infrastructure and boost the economy. Seeing the opportunity, Chung managed to secure a contract for the country's most significant project at the time, the restoration of the Goryeo Bridge in 1953. However, this promising project didn't unfold as expected. The reality was that Chung was still naive, lacking the necessary equipment, safety regulations, and experience for such a massive task. This resulted in slow progress, on-site accidents, and rising inflation eating into his fixed payment. Chung ran out of money and had to take on more loans, while his brothers sold their houses to help pay their workers. Despite these challenges, they persevered until the bridge was completed. By then, the family faced substantial debts, financial losses on the project, and humiliation from their competitors. Criticisms arose. What would a guy who only finished the 6th grade know about inflation? A dummy like him had it coming. He doesn't even know that long-term construction requires an installment contract. Witnessing his family's destitution and living in small shacks, Chung felt deep guilt for their struggles. He vowed to not only build a successful business for them, but to create the biggest company in the entire country. I had no intention whatsoever of abandoning my business. I had failed because I was lacking and in need of more experience. However, I brushed it off and simply thought of it as an expensive lesson. Although the Goryeo Bridge was a total disaster, it also became the turning point in Hyundai's history. Chung's company received a high credit score from the Ministry of Interior, allowing him to receive loans more easily and expand his business. He also learned the importance of heavy equipment and advanced machinery, thanks to his partnership with the U.S. Army. He was able to purchase the necessary equipment directly from the U.S. Army. At that time, such equipment was primarily owned by the South Korean government, and private businesses were prohibited from importing them overseas. This gave Chung a significant advantage over his competition. With this advantage, the Hyundai company made the most economical bids and secured numerous restoration projects across the country, involving roads, bridges, dams, and buildings. This propelled Hyundai into becoming one of the fastest-growing companies in South Korea. Despite the success, Chung wasn't content with domestic projects and became the first in his country to take his construction business to the international stage. He competed with the largest firms in the industry and secured several billion-dollar projects, including the Jubal Industrial Harbor in Saudi Arabia and the Arab Shipbuilding and Repair Yard in Bahrain. This transformation turned his company from a struggling business into a rising global conglomerate in just 2 decades, realizing his goal of building the biggest firm in South Korea by 1960. In hindsight, this massive growth wouldn't have occurred without government intervention. Hyundai, along with other family-owned rising conglomerates, received special treatment from the government, including financial subsidies, loan guarantees, and even tax breaks if needed, to grow and diversify rapidly. These chaebols, as they later became known, were crucial forces behind South Korea's economic growth, benefiting immensely and helping the country rise into a highly developed nation. It's essential to acknowledge that this special treatment wasn't granted without reason. Chung Ju-Young's relentless work ethic and the remarkable growth of Hyundai were precisely what the government needed at the time. His do-or-die spirit led Hyundai into various industries, including shipbuilding, store chains, electronics, and financial services. However, there was one particular industry that Chung never lost sight of, the same business he once created but lost during the war, and that industry was none other than the automobile sector. The Korean government implemented a new policy, stating that no foreign automakers could operate in the country without forming joint ventures with local businesses. This strategy aimed to enhance their knowledge and production capabilities in the car industry, given the country's limited technologies and resources in this field. Responding to this, Chung decided to re-enter the automobile industry and established the Hyundai Motor Company in 1967. He struck a deal with the Ford Motor Company to license the use of their vehicles and set up a large plant in Ulsan for the assembly line. In under 6 months, the Hyundai factory was completed, and the first car rolled out from the factory floor, the Hyundai Cortina. The end product was no different than the Ford Cortina, a car designed for the masses in Great Britain. However, while the model was a huge success there, the Cortina turned out to be the complete opposite in South Korea. These cars were built for driving on asphalt, but the poor road conditions in the country made the vehicle undrivable in most areas. As a result, the Cortina became a laughingstock in Korea, and people began to perceive them as useless cars. Customers stopped making payments, and demands for refunds spread across the country. Simultaneously, the Hyundai factory faced severe flooding in September of 1969, with much of their equipment and car parts submerged under 4 feet of rainwater. Assembled Cortinas floated around inside the factory. To make matters worse, rumors spread that Hyundai was selling waterlogged vehicles, further damaging their sales and reputation. This pushed the company to the brink of bankruptcy. However, even with all these misfortunes, whenever people suggested to Chung that it was time to close the business, he'd snap back saying, "I'd never take down a single Hyundai sign with my own hands. Even if a business is struggling and everything seems hopeless, I will make it work. If I start something, I'm going to see it through." With this attitude, Chung simply returned to work and kept producing vehicles for the next few years. As time went by and the road conditions improved significantly, the Cortina eventually gained higher sales in South Korea. Soon after, another Ford model was in the works for Hyundai, and the Ulsan factory began to expand, with more room for production. But then things began to sour. The American car giant Ford refused to let Hyundai distribute the Cortina overseas, arguing that their partnership was not made for the global market, but the Korean market only. Ford also refused to compromise on sharing profits equally, as Hyundai was not sharing the Cortina's line structure or technologies. In Chung's eyes, what Ford really wanted was to take over the Korean market themselves, while using Hyundai as a subcontractor for cheap labor. Furious with Ford, he terminated their contract in 1974 and decided to build a brand new car, only this time on his own terms and playing by his own rules. While he didn't know it at the time, Chung was about to change the whole Korean car industry into what we know it as today. After terminating the contract with Ford, Chung immediately partnered with Mitsubishi for the use of their engines and rear axles. He hired a group of talented European engineers to help design their next vehicle, the Hyundai Pony. Suitable for unpaved roads and with a price tag of just $5,900, the Pony became an instant hit in South Korea, becoming the first mass-produced car in the country. It performed so well on their market that 4 out of every 10 cars sold in South Korea were ponies. With great confidence, Chung and his team began to expand their new model to the worldwide marketplace, where they sold fairly well and even became a best-selling vehicle in Canada. In spite of the success, the Pony couldn't be launched in the biggest car market yet, the USA, due to its failure to meet federal emissions standards. However, Chung wasn't going to let that stop him. In 1985, they released a new model to the public, the Hyundai Excel, which successfully passed the emissions standards, allowing Hyundai to finally break into the American car market at just $4,995. It cost half the average price of a new car at the time. During its very first year, Hyundai sold a staggering 168,000 XLs in the US market alone, and 1 million more worldwide. It was truly a major breakthrough for the Korean car industry, and Hyundai had finally positioned itself as a major car brand. But not exactly in the way Chung had envisioned. The problem was that they still lagged behind in terms of quality and reliability, and the public only saw them as cheap Korean cars with barely any features. Along with the cars needing frequent repairs and earning a poor reputation for their brand, their sales were also plummeting, and Hyundai soon became the butt of jokes in America. At one point, people mocked their name, saying it stands for "Hope you understand nothing's drivable and inexpensive." To turn itself around, Chung and his team worked tirelessly to bring the brightest talent and develop their own engines and car parts. By the 1990s, a series of new models followed suit, such as the Hyundai Accent, the Sonata, and the Elantra. While these models initially struggled to take off, they eventually gained higher sales as they started catching up with the latest features. Hyundai went on to acquire Kia Motors in 1998, marking the beginning of a new era for Korean cars. Together, they invested heavily in the quality, design, and manufacturing process of their vehicles. By 2004, they achieved the impossible, coming in tied with Honda as the second-best initial brand quality in the industry, only behind Toyota. Even in spite of that achievement, Hyundai still struggled to shed its unfortunate past reputation in the public eye. However, Hyundai still had one more trick up its sleeve to prove its quality. The company announced their 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty on all their vehicles sold in the US. Thanks to this, sales of Hyundai vehicles have risen to make them one of the top car brands of the 21st century. Chung dedicated his later years to philanthropy, running for presidential office, and even attempting to reunite the Korean countries, until meeting his end in 2001, leaving the control of his company to his sons. It is failures rather than successes that teach us invaluable lessons. It is not necessary to remember one's success. That should be remembered by others. Instead, we should remember our losses and failures, because those who forget their failures will fail again and again. Currently, the Hyundai Motor Group has just surpassed General Motors to become the third largest automaker in the world, behind Toyota and the Volkswagen Group. They are among the top leaders in electric vehicles. This is the story of how a poor boy living in the mountains of Korea built one of the most powerful companies in the world, Hyundai. After hearing Chung Ju-Young's story of relentless determination and mind-blowing growth, what do you think was the turning point that truly changed Hyundai's fate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.